I think as a small business owner, you really have, and this is what I really share with my consulting clients, like you have such a unique opportunity to really mentor and make a difference in your employees. It's not just, hey, we're going to clean homes or whatever type of business you have. You really are encouraging and building up, these individuals that are working with you. And for me, that's just a huge honor. Like they can work anywhere, but they've chosen to work at my company.
Hi guys, welcome back to Patent Pending, the podcast. Thank you so much for joining us today. Today we have Rosalynn Robb joining us to talk about many things regarding the transformations she's been through in her life. Rosalynn is an Air Force spouse. She is a business owner. She has a ton to tell you today. Let's dive in. Hi, Rosalynn.
Yeah. Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here with you and Katie.
Thank you so much for joining us today. We're so thrilled to have you. Can you just start off telling us a little bit about yourself and everything that you've been doing most recently, both with your business and personally?
Yes, absolutely. So a little bit of background about myself. I'm kind of in the middle of transitions in many ways. With recently, I would say recently, but in the last 2.5 years, I've been married to my wonderful husband, Andrew, who's in the Air Force. And before he married me, I had a company that was 5 years old that I started from the ground, a residential cleaning company. And so I kept the business because he was in his residency for the first 2 years. And so he was gone for about, goodness gracious, I think prior to COVID, I think it was like 20 weeks out of the 2 years. And so I would go out and visit him on the weekends, or when he was in town, I'd go up to Dayton, Ohio from Louisville, which is a 2.5 hour drive one way. But knowing that that was not going to be our long-term place, I decided to keep my business. So I still run it, but then the Air Force actually sent my husband and I to Abilene, Texas, which is 2.5 hours west of Fort Worth. So I would say that in the midst of the transition from this summer to where we are this fall, heading into winter, I am still running my cleaning company with 10 employees and traveling back and forth quite a bit. So probably like every other weekend, I go back to Abilene for about Friday to Tuesdays. And in the midst of that, and we can dig deeper into this, but I also spent a lot of time in the last year, especially even with the COVID time, to really think about what is the next season, what is the next phase of life. And so in the midst of all of this happening, I also launched another business, which is a online cleaning business consulting services for business owners.
Wonderful. That's amazing. I think that your move to take things online with your prior experience, just serving you so well to do so is perfect for the times. Being able to thrive with a business online nowadays, especially, with COVID and just everything advancing so quickly with technology, is so important. And especially for you, can you talk a little bit about your desires to do that and what really set forth the vision and the aspirations to move your business online and build it out in a few other directions?
Absolutely. So, as a military spouse, and I knew this kind of going into, obviously getting engaged and thinking more long term, but, we, like most military families, move, every 2 to 3 years. And so, before my husband really understood how much work it takes to run a cleaning company and all of that, and the amount of time it takes to build clients and employees, and he was like, "Oh, you'll just start a cleaning company wherever we go." And I'm like, "No, I'm not." So anyway, I thought, well, I don't want to start an actual cleaning company, but I have a lot of experience and I'm passionate about offering quality services, to clients. And so with my background, I thought, why don't I take a lot of my successes as well as failures in the cleaning business, and why don't I try to encourage and help, build other small business owner businesses. I did think about having a franchise at one time prior to being married. And I had a Lexington location as well, which is about an hour between Louisville, or an hour away from Louisville. So I did I did two locations, and then I was going to do one in Cincinnati, and then I was going to do one in Nashville, and do that. But then obviously the military piece came in. So, but there's a lot of things with obviously franchising, and so what I would love to do, and I do with my consulting clients, is really tapping into what their why is in their business. I don't want it to be, exact blueprint of my cleaning company here, in Louisville. But, there are so many processes and just a lot of tips and tricks and just a lot of things that I can offer them, that will fit into their molds of why they want to do business.
Yes, absolutely. I think that that's relatable to any business across the board. If you can't really identify and work with your why consistently throughout your life as a business owner, then it becomes very difficult to stay aligned with your clientele and the work that you're doing on a day-to-day basis, right? So could you tell us a little bit more about why you started it and what sparked your interest in the cleaning business world to begin with? I've had that inspiration as well, just in my time starting out as being a stay-at-home mom. I was like, I'm cleaning my house all the time. I'm doing such a great job. This is fantastic. I should start a business doing this. And then that kind of like went to the wayside. But I see that I did kind of research it a bit in the beginning when I first had that idea, and it's a lot of work. Like there's a lot of details that go into this. So what's your reason? Why do you really want to be in the world of cleaning business?
Absolutely. So I actually was at a house that I've cleaned for 11 years. I was their nanny in college, and I said, "Oh, I love cleaning." And Craig Dilger was like, "No one likes cleaning." I'm like, "No, I really do. Like, I really do." I was like, even if I don't, have a cleaning company, I'm sure I'll find like one or two homes wherever we go just to clean because I love it. But yeah, I grew up. I was adopted when I was 3.5, and so my mom kind of knew she was in trouble when they brought me back to the hotel that they were staying at, even though it was still at the orphanage, and I was like, putting their shoes all in order, and she's like, "Oh no!" And so my mom loves to cook, wonderful cook. And I'm the cleaner of the house, so it worked really well for us. But I would go over to friends' houses. Literally, I'd be like 5 years old, so I remember being like 11, 12, and like cleaning their microwaves, and the moms were like, "What on earth?" And I just didn't have chores because I naturally cleaned, and I was also I didn't like people telling me what to do, so my parents probably just tricked me to think I didn't have chores. But anyway, but yeah, I love cleaning. And so that's something that I actually thought about before I went to college. I was like, maybe I should start a cleaning company. And then I was like, I'm going to college in a year. Like, I'm not going to do that. And so I just really didn't even think about cleaning again. Went to college for counseling, and I wanted to help actually troubled youth in teen homes. And then realized in college when I did a couple of internships, I'm not really gifted with youth. And so I was like, okay, we need to change this. And so long story short, I actually junior year of college had wanted to become a federal prosecutor for human trafficking cases. That was just something that I really learned more about and was just really passionate about, that we need some solid, prosecutors that will, stand for truth and not just take, plea deals just for the sake of plea deals. And so anyway, so I actually applied to law school, and I didn't get in the first time. And I really was very, very, I was very, very upset. I was like, gosh, what am I going to do? And so actually it was Andy Bashir, who's now the governor of Kentucky. And I was over at his house because I watched babysit their kids. And it was right after, I want to say it was like maybe a week or two after I didn't get into law school. And he was like, "Oh, well, there's so many attorneys out there, like just give it a year or something like that." And he's like, "I think you should start your own business." And I was like, "And do what?" And he was like, "I don't know, you'll figure it out." And I was really against starting business because I know, like you said, it's a lot of work. So anyway, I came home and I really thought more about, well, I know cleaning. Like I know a lot of people because I've babysat in Louisville during college. I have good connections. I was actually a house manager for two physicians in between graduating college and preparing for the law school, and all of that because I wanted to go debt free. And so, I had, their recommendations and word of mouth as well. And so I said, why don't I start this cleaning company? And one of my best friends from college had also graduated, but was waiting for her husband. And so we started it together. And yeah, it really took off. I mean, I really thought, oh, we'll just do like a couple and we'll like split the difference or whatever. And then it was like, oh my goodness, we need help. Like we need to hire more people. And so we started in January, and I hired my second, not my friend, but another girl in February, and it just really took off. So, but again, when we talk about the reasons of why for business, yes, I love cleaning. I enjoy it. But more importantly, with that, because I wasn't able to get into law school to help victims of human trafficking, I still wanted to find a way to bring that passion into my business. And so I was on the Louisville Human Trafficking Task Force for a couple of years, and I remember while I was at home at Christmas, again, incredibly discouraged and upset that I didn't get into law school. I said, can I create a business in order to really build awareness of trafficking victims, and then also donate a percentage to local trafficking organizations that help victims. There's a lot of great organizations in town as well as nationally and worldwide, but they have very little funding. And so I really was able to see how cleaning, there's obviously different types of, trafficking, but there's the domestic work, the labor. And I said, can I take cleaning and show that it is an honorable, vocation where people should get paid way more than minimum wage. Because again, you may think, oh yeah, you just clean toilets and you're whatever. It's not that hard. It is. It's very labor, exhausting. I was on 3 homes today. But more importantly than that is it's such a huge honor to be in someone's home. Like you're being, allowed into some of their sacred places. And so it is something that, is not just, oh, I'm a maid or I'm just a cleaner. And so really being able to catch that vision, I was really excited about that, and being able to share, especially we do a lot of homes in the East End, Louisville, which is obviously the higher end. And some people just really didn't realize that trafficking is going on in our state, even in our city. And so it was neat to be able to bring that piece.
That's awesome. I love that you were able to kind of use your business as a platform in that way and really kind of bring your passions together. I want to hear a little bit about, it sounds like when you started this cleaning business, especially like you said in the beginning, all of a sudden you were like, oh my gosh, I got to hire more people. This is crazy. Because you did establish a great network, which is awesome, and probably a great piece of advice for anybody starting a business is to really look into whatever networks that you already have. So as you started to realize that, I'm sure that your life got kind of crazy and you had probably a million things going on. Can you talk a little bit about what your strategies have been to maintain a good work-life balance along the way?
Absolutely. Again, almost 7 years into owning Freedom Cleaning and then starting Clean Start Consulting last month. When I was preparing to start Clean Start, I thought, oh goodness, what are the things that I did really well? And what are the things that I would not do or recommend to anybody in their first couple of years of business? And I'll definitely say, I had a counseling background. I didn't have an MBA or business background. So I think it was a lot of learning. And what I love about being an entrepreneur is, the main skill is really there's 2, I think, but the one is, just having a thirst of knowledge to learn. I love reading books. I don't have to go sit in an MBA class and, pay all that money. Like I can go and look up something that I'm interested in, or, find someone that, has that skill set or that knowledge and ask them tons of questions. But the other thing too is having, the drive, the ambition, because you can have all these great ideas, but, really putting, it on the ground and running is a whole nother thing. And so, as far as we were, building, and I think I hired about 5 people within the first 3 months of business. It takes a lot. I would say for the sake of sanity early on, and this is what I'm doing even with Clean Start, is realizing you can't do everything. And I think I felt pressured, and a lot of it, for people who start small businesses, how many people have, thousands and thousands of dollars lying around just to start a business? You know what I mean? So there is that money constraint for sure. You can't just, hire everybody to do everything. but that is something with even Clean Start that I've brought in people to say, like I was doing my, Instagram, and it's just really obvious that I did it because it's not looking as like really professional. And I'm like, oh my goodness. And I'm just, spending all this time doing it. I'm like, I don't really enjoy this. Like, so let's go bring somebody in that's really skilled that will, carry the message that I want to carry through it. And so same thing with, cleaning of homes. I love cleaning, but I can't be on all the homes. So really finding, the right people to be part of your team. I think for sure, if you're going to build a company and you think of longevity as well as, scaling, you have to have people around you that you can trust. And then what I would say too, on the tip of that, is making sure that you have people that really, have the strengths that you don't have. Because again, I think my first couple of years, I would say the first 3 years are really, really hard. My first 2 years, I worked 100-hour work weeks, to be honest. I mean, I calculated it. I was doing, the networking, I was doing the bookkeeping, I was doing the cleaning, the training, I mean, just everything. And some things I look back, I'm like, no. Like, for instance, I felt bad to like maybe ask somebody to like fold the laundry on Saturdays to like, or refill the bottles so that next week. And so I would do that on the weekends. And now we have people that rotate and do that. And so I think as a business owner, really, I think that there's a lot of scariness of like asking for people for help. But honestly, 7 years in, I'm so thankful that I am able to do that. Because I would be completely insane right now if I was doing everything on my own.
No, absolutely. I think that there's really something to be said about being able to get to a point where you're comfortable delegating tasks, because so many business owners are, I think, in that position of, I have this vision. It's exactly what I want it to be. This is going to be beautiful. This needs to be this way. And then they try to have somebody else do it, and it's not like exactly what they thought. And it's like, wait, but I wanted something else. Now, how do I get that if I don't just do it myself? Let me just do it myself. But that's a really bad habit to instill from the very beginning. And we've learned that too, of like, okay, we can't just like do everything at the same time. You have to like even delegate tasks, or just kind of like time block your day if you are doing a lot of stuff yourself, to separate your time spent on doing different things, just as you would if you were delegating it to somebody else to do, so that it can be done the best way possible. It's all about what you said, finding the right people to do the right things and highlighting their skills and allowing them to kind of like pick up where maybe you lack as the business owner. If you don't enjoy doing graphics, then hire somebody to do graphics. If you don't enjoy doing the networking, then hire somebody to do the networking. It's so important, because then if you're not able to do that, then it takes all of the joy out of whatever work you may be doing to sustain your business, right?
Absolutely. You have to be happy with what you're doing, or else it's going to fail, because you're going to be like, gosh, I mean, especially when you don't have somebody, behind you telling you, like a boss telling you what to do. If you're like not happy with what you're doing, you're like, well, why am I doing this? Maybe I don't need this business. So agreed. And one thing that I like what you said is, yes, I think I learned early on that I'm a control freak, so for little things, for instance, folding the cloth bins a certain way, I want them folded this way. And finally I had to just like, it wasn't like they just like threw them in the bins, but I finally was like, okay, you know what? Somebody else is doing it and I'm not. So it's okay. Like, it's okay. I don't need to be. And then so my manager I was helping her with cloth bins, and she was like redoing some that somebody else had done. And I was like, Robbie, just let it go. Like, it's, it's still clean. It's still nice, but it is, you have that little, that little thing inside of you where you think you know what's best. But I think the beauty, though, of having humility is important too. And that goes with being able to delegate, because you want to also have a culture in your company where it's not like you're just a dictator, obviously, like we're going to do it my way, or, that's it. But like really, making sure you have people on your team that feel like they can say, hey, have you thought about this? Or, hey, I think that this would be a great idea. And I'll admit, like, I'm like, oh yeah, I never really thought about that. So I think, having humility and having transparency, I mean, especially during COVID, trying to figure out, are we going to close the business for a period of time? Or are we keeping it open? And, every week I said to the team, it's going to be a weekly decision, as we learn more about, where we are, because this is something that none of us, ever expected was going to happen. But hey, I want you to know that like, I care about you as an individual, and obviously my clients, but you come first, your safety, your health. But I think that they really appreciated me not just being like, well, this is the plan, and then that's it, but just say, hey, we're going to take this on, a case by case situation and see what happens. But I'm here for you, and we're going to get through this. So I think that that's really important. I think as a small business owner, you really have, and this is what I really share with my consulting clients, like you have such a unique opportunity to really mentor and make a difference in your employees. It's not just, hey, we're going to clean homes or whatever type of business you have. You really are encouraging and building up, these individuals that are working with you. And for me, that's just a huge honor that somebody would want to, spend, whether it's, a couple months, and they're going off to graduating college, or it's, 5+ years working with me. Like they can work anywhere, but they've chosen to work at my company. And so I think that that's really important as a business owner. And as you're building that trust with them, again, that's where you're building that trust, and you're building that time that you've, had in your journey together in the company. That's where you are going to see as a business owner, oh, hey, this person, like, I can tell she really enjoys this, or this person like has all these ideas over here. And that's where I think the delegation comes in. But you can't just get a delegate to just have something off your checklist, like, oh, well, I just don't want to do this. Like, you've got to spend time and get to know the people, or, research if it's not within your company, it's a, agency or that kind of thing, before you can just delegate. But it does take time.
Yeah, that's so true. I feel like a lot of what you're saying is it speaks to the idea of employment is like a two-way street, 100%. So whether you're the business owner or you're the employee, like everyone has to give and take. It has to be a two-way street. Both parties have to be happy and have to be, in order for it to be a successful venture. So especially as a small business owner, a giant corporation might have the ability to say, do it this way, and because you want that name on your resume or whatever it is. But when you're a small business, somebody is choosing to work with you. Most likely a big part of it is because you are who you are, and they enjoy you as a person and your company and the way that you've developed it, and they have some motivation to want to help the company as well. So I think it's really important, like you said, to make sure that you're not just, I don't really like this, so I'm just going to give it to someone and someone else will do it. You really have to think about, how is this helping them, and are they interested in doing this? Is this helpful for their career? Because if you're not thinking about them in the situation, they're not going to think about you either.
Absolutely. And I think in that piece too, I mean, it's a learning process for both parties. And so, for instance, I had a girl recently who graduated, well, not recently, I guess it's been a whole year from college. And so I said, she told me she wanted to stay on, and said, hey, are there, you've been clean for the last 3 years. Like, is there something that you're interested in? And so she mentioned she was really interested in office stuff. I was like, hey, awesome. Because I don't, I'm a on the ground, running face-to-face kind of person. Sitting at a computer desk is not really my favorite thing to do. And so, I gave her some projects to do, and like wouldn't hear anything. I'd be like, is she doing it? Is she not doing it? And I just waited. And then I could, finally could tell. And she finally admitted to me, she goes, I just don't think this is, I was like, no, that's fine. Like, that is totally fine. Or just even in a training role of, I have an amazing operations manager. And I think, she's very talented. But, there's other people that I've had in the past where you have to allow in some ways too for mistakes. But as the business owner, it hurts you too, because it's your reputation, it's, your name, business on the line. But, like for instance, I had someone do the schedule and they forgot to put somebody on the schedule. And should I caught it? Probably, I kind of completely trusted them and kind of moved on in some aspects. So I didn't, but it was still on me regardless. But there was another time that I did see it, that was going to happen. And I waited to see, but I was able to say, hey, this is a teaching moment. But I was able to notify the client, and we worked it all out, that kind of thing. But I think that's really important too, is to be able to make sure that you're also giving room for errors, because goodness gracious, I make a lot of errors too. So I think if your employees can see that you're just as human, I think that's a really great environment to foster.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I totally agree with that. And I think it's really important to think about those things right from the start when you're creating any sort of company, just thinking about what weighs in on the culture of whatever you're creating and what these people are going to think of you as they move on with their employment with you is so important. Can you talk a little bit more? You touched on it a little bit about the like learning curve of becoming a leader in this capacity. Like I just don't feel, I don't know, maybe you're just a natural born leader and that's like your identity and that's in your DNA. But that's not everybody. And I think that there's a lot of challenges around that for many people when they make that transition from, typical job or employee or student or whatever you may be to business owner, learning how to lead in a way that's effective for many different demographics of people that may be working with you. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about that and anything that came up along the way that was difficult during that transition.
Absolutely. So it's on one of my blog posts on Clean Start. But when I thought about having a business, I remember I was telling the family that I nannied for, was actually on the way back for going back to Christmas in 2013, when I didn't get into law school. And I mentioned to this attorney, like, oh, hey, so Andy says that I should start my own business. I think it's a terrible idea. And he was like, no, I think it's a good idea. And I'm like, and the first thing that came out, I was like, I don't want to hire employees. I don't want to trust them. I don't want to do anything with them. And it was a real fear of mine. And it is. I mean, I think that it's the number one issue. And whether it's, you have a startup business or just, any business, I mean, employees is a huge, huge part of your business. And so I would say that early on, I was a lot more soft in a sense where it's like, I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. And like they would clean and then I'd like, oh, this is not good. I would just go behind them and just do it. And like, but that was not, helpful. And so what I had to get into my mind, a lot was fear of man, of like, okay, this is a pride issue here. You want people to like you, but you're sacrificing communicating with your employees that they're not doing a good job. Like, and that was like, it was a horrible job, but things that, are the level of quality that I promise our clients. And so that was something that, I would run into my head a lot, or I would have my friend Amanda, who started with me, like, hey, why don't you go talk to so-and-so about this? And she was very good at that. But one thing that helped me change in how I led and not just, wasn't really honest in a sense of like saying, hey, you didn't really do a good job here, is well as thinking about if I was in their shoes. And I know that I'm not everybody for sure. Some people probably don't, care at all. But I want to believe, obviously, when I hire, and I do in every single interview, I say, you can get a part-time job anywhere. I said, but I only hire people that truly want to serve families. Like, integrity, but really, do you have a kind heart? Do you really care about the people that we're going to serve? Because I don't think you can really teach that, those skills. And so really thinking in my head, okay, if I hired them and I really truly believe that they really care about my clients, our clients, then wouldn't they want to know if they did a good job or not? Like, they're not going to be able to change if you don't tell them. They're just going to be thinking, oh, I've been doing great. And then, then they get shocked when, let's say, a client fires us or something. And they're like, why? And I could be thinking, oh, well, I know why. Like, no, that doesn't work that way. And so I think that that's what really helped me become a better leader, is to be able to think about where, they are. How am I helping them in their, in their journey and vocation? And I would say this, that a lot of my employees over the last 7 years have been students in college. They're in their third, fourth, whatever, even freshman year of college. And then I do have older ones too. But I think, wow, like this is one of probably their first jobs that they're going to have. So what kind of impression am I leaving them, so that when they go out into another job, another company, have I helped shape them to be the kind of employee that I wish I would have too? So I think that that's been helpful for me when I think about the long term of being a leader too. One thing that's been helpful, I had a manager meeting about a year and a half ago, and I had everybody on the team that was, managers. I had 4 of them. I had them do the Enneagram. And then I think that's super awesome. And I was like, oh yeah, it totally shows what I am. But then able to bring this again would tie into delegation. And so then we sat down and said, okay, tell me where you were and, what you did and, your skills. And what's helpful is, like, for instance, one girl is I think it's a number, is it 8, where they're like peacekeeper, that kind of, I think that is number 8. And I thought, yeah, I would not want to put her probably in like a supervisor role where she would have to constantly confront someone, because that's just not her, her personality. Now, could she grow and learn? Certainly. But I think she's going to be miserable. And she is like, she is more, and she's like, I'm more of a follower. I'm not a leader. And so I think that's really super helpful as a leader, is to really be able to, I think you have to really spend time observing, asking good questions, building those relationships so that you can know how to help them get from where they currently are to, the next level. I think that's really important skill to have, is being a good listener. And then again, we talked about, obviously having transparency, humility. I think that really makes a really good leader. But, one thing that I hear over and over again from my clients, whether it's on the phone or I'll pop in, I mean, they tell me, like, I can tell that your employees love to work for you. Like, they love you. And I'm always like, well, I love them. Like, and I really do. And I know that I'm not paying them to do that, but they can tell. I mean, one of the clients is a CEO of a company, a massive company. And he goes, I can tell that they're happy when they come to our house. And it's a direct reflection of your leadership. And so, yeah, I really do take a huge responsibility. Obviously, are there tough days? Is not all cheery and happy. I mean, for instance, we had one of our employees had to call out yesterday and say, hey, I was around somebody that tested positive for COVID, and I was babysitting their kids, 3 days. So today was just a little nuts, and everybody had to be flexible, as we had to cover some homes that, because she was on like 2 of them. And so, but I appreciate, and this is what I say, is if people know that your employees know that you, have their back, they're going to have your back too. Like, for instance, I was coming back from Texas and my car died, my rental car, on the side of the road, 60 miles from Dallas to fly out. And I'm like on the side of the road, I'm like, I'm going to miss the flight, even though it's 5 o'clock in the morning and I'm flying out at 8. And sure enough, I did. But I didn't have any fear. I mean, I'm like, I do let my managers know. And they're like, hey, we got it covered. Chill out. Why don't you just, because I had like, I think 3 homes, and I was coming back that Friday, and it was a Wednesday. And Tuesday. They're like, just stay the whole week. Like, we've got it all covered. And it takes, it's a special thing. So what I would encourage a small business owner is, it's not something that happens overnight. Not every single person I hired, is a wonderful employee. I mean, there are some that were like, whoo, goodness gracious, like it just was not a good fit for either of us. But I think a huge thing that I would say is don't allow the fear of, oh, I'm not going to find the right employee, or I'm not going to find, maybe my expectations are too high. Like, I think, especially in the service industry and cleaning, there's a huge turnover rate. I cleaned my sophomore year of college, probably from, I think it was like March to June, before I took my nanny job. And I love cleaning, but it was not well managed. And they constantly, I mean, every single week they had somebody new. In fact, my manager actually worked for them too. She goes, yeah, one time some guy, they just called and said, oh, you have a job. And the guy never did really an interview. He just showed up at a house. I was like, what do I do? That's terrible. We do not do that at all. You know what I mean? But so I would just say, as a small business owner, like, in the midst of everything, like, who you hire is a make it or break it for your company. And so don't just hire somebody with a pulse, which can be tempting sometimes. That was something that I early on said to myself in a small business, the sky's the limit as an entrepreneur. You know what I mean? I could be like, oh, I'm going to be the #1 cleaning company in Kentucky or whatever, Louisville. And I said, no, I don't want to be the #1 big company. I want to have, quality clients and quality employees, because in the long term, that's what I consider successful, not having, a ton of employees and a ton of clients. And then, clients aren't happy because I'm just hiring people just to clean and not having developed their training and all of that, because it takes time to train. And so don't allow money, I think, to be the factor driving point of, well, I just need to hire people so I can make this money. For instance, COVID, not everybody, has this experience. And I feel so terrible for small business owners that have, had to close their business because of COVID. As a cleaning company, people are like, oh, well, you're essential. And we did clean some, for sure. But I mean, our sales were way down, our revenue for sure. But we had 10 clients that literally were like, Rosalynn, like, we really care about your employees. We know that you care about them. Like, please don't come clean our house right now, but we're going to continue to pay. And these are people that pay like $200 a week. They did that for over 3 months. And so that was just a testimony to me. Of course, I did not expect that. Doesn't mean that the other clients that didn't do that, aren't good clients, obviously. But it was a testimony to me that I saw, wow, like the little seed that I planted within my company really grew, and people noticed, clients noticed. And so, yeah, I think that's just a great, testimony to do things well.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think that's something to be said about your character as a business owner as well. Everything that we do in life in general is a reflection of what's going on up here in our minds. And if you're putting people first with the way that you act and the way you show up in the world every day, that's going to reflect directly into your business. And people are going to love you for that. And you're going to thrive because of that. And you're going to have financial success because of that. So it all goes hand in hand. And I think it just goes back to the understanding of needing to be a well-rounded person. Like, you can't just be in it for one reason. It has to be an all-encompassing thing with good intentions on all sides in order for any business to thrive and really succeed, I think. You talked a little bit about how your teams have been so prepared for things that just pop up out of nowhere, like your flight that you missed. Has there been anything along the way, as far as being a business owner, that you knew about and you could anticipate for a while, as far as changes that were coming about in your business, that you took particular steps to prepare for? And if so, what were some of those steps? And are they, usable across the board for different types of businesses, do you think?
For sure. So obviously, I had 2 locations. I think I had like 15 employees at the time. My husband and I met. It was very fast. We met in June of 2017, got engaged Valentine's the next year, and got married March 30th, which was Good Friday, 2018. So it was super fast, but worth it, and it was the right choice. I'd do it all over again. But yeah, in that process, obviously, as a military spouse, thinking, oh my goodness, like, I'm about to move 2.5 hours away. How does this work? And so thankfully, again, the mentoring thing has always been, part of, my philosophy with having a business. Just even mentoring, just in general relationships. I think we always need to have somebody who is 5 steps ahead of us. I have a mentor who's awesome. Her husband has run several amazing small businesses that have gone into huge businesses and all of that. But so she has that experience. But I think that, having that mentoring mentality of somebody who's pouring into me, but I'm also pouring into other people, it really helped, so that it wasn't just like, oh my goodness, I'm getting ready to get married and I need to go find somebody to just like take over this company or just do this. And so, again, as you're watching your employees, you're having dialogue, you're seeing what their skills are. I knew right away that Robbie was, really solid at what she did. I knew she really loved doing things that I didn't like to do, which was like organizing the storage unit and, doing all that kind of stuff, and really great with clients. Everybody loves working with her. I've definitely seen her develop too, because I remember there were times where she was afraid to say no, when there were times where I said, no, you got to tell clients no, you got to tell, you got to have boundaries. I think that's a huge thing. I think as an entrepreneur, and I think in general, all of us, I think boundaries are hard for us, because I think at the core is that people person, or, want to be a people pleaser. And so, one thing that I've seen with Robbie is she's able to say no, or, I'll be on a joint, text message from a client that's like texting at like 10, 11 at night. And early on, I thought, oh my goodness, I got to like respond right away. This is great customer service if I'm like 100% there to like respond at every moment. And to realize, no, like, there's boundaries, like people have to sleep, weekends, I don't respond to things on the weekends. Like, I'm with my husband, like they're going to be okay. Now, if it's an emergency, obviously, well, oh yeah, it's about the Monday morning cleaning, then yeah, we need to respond to it. But if it's like, hey, can I be on the schedule for, instead of Wednesday next week to Thursday, like, no, that can wait until Monday, when I come back into the office. So, anyway, I think that as I was mentoring and building those relationships, I could say, okay, these are people that I can trust, because that was another thing. And this still is a thing. So like, we have continued to grow even with COVID. and we're at the next, I would say we're at the next level. And so I'm having a meeting tomorrow with somebody else to potentially be the assistant manager to Robbie, because I really want her to have that support. I don't want to just be like, okay, Robbie, you just do everything that I did. That was insanity. Like, I want to make sure if I'm not going to be in town, able to, at a quick text, hey, somebody wasn't able to show up or somebody got sick. I want to make sure that she has the right network around her to continue to help with the business. But when I thought about, do I keep my business, do I not, when I knew I was marrying my husband, I think the number one decision that I have when it comes to my business is, can I continue to still offer the service that I've promised my clients? And if I can't, then it's time to either sell it or it's time to close it. Because I take that with such integrity. Like, I'm not here just to make money. Like, I'm here to really help. Most of our clients are CEOs or physicians, attorneys, like they're, busy families. And if we're not on our A game doing a great job cleaning, and they're coming home and then wondering, oh gosh, did they take the trash out? Or did they even do the baseboards? Like, I'm just adding stress to their life when they can think, which I would, oh gosh, why don't I just clean the home? Like, if I have to wonder if they did their job, it's not doing a service to them. So anyway, so I did. I realized, okay, I need to really pour into Robbie and some of the other team members, which I would say I have 4 of them right now that have been with me 4+ years. And again, what I love about them is there's no one this is what I was worried about. I was like, okay, great. I have like 4 people. One was here for a little bit longer. So I would say like seniority from like that, time level. But I was worried about, gosh, if I put somebody in charge, like, are the other people going to be like, why didn't I get hired to do that? Or why? And what I've seen is that those different strengths and passions, like the 4 of them, I mean, they just work really well together. Robbie can do trading, but she doesn't enjoy it as much. But we have somebody who's been with us for 5+ years, and that's what she does that. And she's very good at it. And so, again, having those right people to delegate to do that, so that when I knew that transition to be moved, fully up to Ohio was going to be a big change. And then again, I had the same thought of, once I found out that we were going to Texas, it's like, that's not just a quick, I'll pop in the car like I could in Dayton. It's only 2.5 hours. I can get there. It's like, I'm stuck. I'm like, it's 1,000+ miles. Like, I can't just pop in the car. So yeah, I think that, learning those transition points are important to really think about ahead of time. But then I think too, as we know with COVID, like, we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. And so I think when it comes to transitions, to navigating, do you do something, do you don't? I think a big thing is, and I think entrepreneurs are very good at this, is having creativity. You've got to have creativity. And with creativity, I would say you have that positivity as well. So for instance, I mentioned, I knew in theory, I would say, like, oh yeah, being a military spouse, like, we're going to get to travel the world probably, and we're going to get to live in all these new different places. But I'll admit, there was a grieving point early on in the marriage, like before I got married, and then just even really realizing, like, gosh, like, maybe I will close my business down before we move to, maybe we get called to go overseas. Like, I'm not going to just run a business from overseas, because we're not that place. And so there was a lot of, I think, grieving of, like, goodness, because my identity as a single woman, having a successful business, I was like, well, what am I going to be? Like, I'm very, like, I love what my husband does. I love that we're serving our country together, but that's not me though. Like, I'm not the one in uniform doing that. Like, I'm there to support him, encourage him, but what do I do then? And so I think that there was those moments of, like, goodness gracious, like, and somebody's a real entrepreneur. I'm like, I mean, I can go work another job somewhere, but like, that's hard for me. It's hard for me. Like, but then instead of, in the midst of that kind of discouragement of, like, goodness gracious, like, I probably won't have this freedom cleaning business for like 50 years or whatever, because of knowing that, the military is very unpredictable. But turning that into positivity of saying, this is where Clean Start came from. Like, okay, all that time, the last 7 years of running this cleaning business from the scratch, starting it from scratch and then growing it to where it is today, like, that wasn't wasted. So how do I take some of those lessons that I learned, those experiences that I learned, and I didn't have to start another business in the cleaning industry, but I did. And so that's what I did. I pivoted. And so I think we've learned a lot with COVID. You've got to pivot. And so that's where I was able to say, okay, obviously I want to be able to work from anywhere in the world. So if my husband gets, orders to Germany, I'm not like, well, I think we need to stay, of course the military isn't gonna care what I think, but I want to be able to work from anywhere in the world. So I need to think about an online business. And so that's how I pivoted. And so I use that creativity. Okay, how do I do this? But then also kind of as I touched base on in the intro of like my passion to fight against human trafficking, I thought, okay, again, how do I tie that passion into my next new business? And so something that I've always wanted to do, and I thought, hey, maybe this will be the time. I think, when you start a brand new business, it's very busy. So it's not like, I could do, I think, 3 different projects at the same time. But I do know that next year I would love to start a nonprofit. Well, not nonprofit, but / a foundation, to where I can help women survivors of human trafficking, with grants to help them start their own businesses. And so what I say is give them a clean start and to remind them like they're not defined by their past. And so again, taking that. And so I think that's honestly going to fuel my business ambitions for even Clean Start. And it has. I mean, I have clients in London, I have clients in other places, and I'm like, wow, this is like global. So again, where we can sit, in the mud in a sense and be discouraged. And I don't want to take away the challenges, because there are a lot of challenges as a military spouse. But yet think, wow, like here's where one door might shut. I may not have freedom cleaning for, 50 plus years, but yet the world is my oyster when it comes to being a military spouse. Wow, I didn't even think about taking my company with Clean Start globally, but it just happened. And so I think, again, having that positivity, that creativity, and just let the journey go. Sometimes there's a book that a friend of mine recommended, but we're talking about like kind of life balance. Is there such thing? And the lady goes, no, there's no such thing as a life balance. Sometimes you just have to ride the wave. And I was like, yeah, I needed to hear that today. Like sometimes you do. We can't have everything figured out.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think it's really important, and it sounds like it's what you've done every time you've kind of come to a crossroads or a new venture, is to like really look in and remember that initial thing that drove you to do what you want to do. So even though you've been in this cleaning industry for so long, and it's what you love to do, it's what you've built your businesses off of, that drive to be a part of the solution with trafficking is so important to you. And I love that you've been able to, at every step of the way, look back and look in and really reflect on what you want to accomplish with these businesses, and really just use the businesses for good causes and really to make progress in the world. And I think that's awesome. And I think that also leads to a lot of dedication to your work, because you have something that you're so passionate about and really want to solve and want to help people, and you have this like genuine desire to do these things. And if you don't work hard in your business and you don't make it successful, you're not going to be able to do that. So I think it's really important, and it's awesome that you have. I think that's something that people have to be reminded of sometimes, is to take a step back and like think about what really drives you. And that doesn't necessarily have to be what you do for business, but if it's something that this business can help you accomplish, then that's still a driving force that will help you succeed.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that too, Katie. I think that like everything that you do, when you bring it back to your passions, it's just done that much better, and it's done that much more successfully and that much more quickly when you're aligned with what you're really interested in. If you could take the example of like being in a job that you hate. Like if you're sitting around and you're going to a workplace every day that's just not serving what you feel is your purpose in your heart and your passion and your interest, then you're not really gonna sustain good work all the time, right? But if you're loving what you're doing and there's a reason why, and you're able to like keep that common thread in all the aspects of the work and relate it back to that why, it's able to serve your business and everything that you're doing that much better. So yeah, absolutely. I agree with that 100%. Rosalynn, can you tell us a little bit more about that transition? You spoke about taking that step to make the transformation from single woman to a military spouse. And I think that's a very foundational thing that, of course, has influence on your life, and, builds your life really, and influence on your business, I guess you should say. So can you tell us a little bit about the change that you went through there, and anything that you would have as advice or tips for somebody who may be going through a similar experience?
So I will say this, that I don't know if I could have been married when I started my business with freedom cleaning, because I was working like 100-hour work weeks. So it was definitely a season of life that you can't do when you're married. And I remember thinking, a lot of people be like, oh, you're single, you have so much freedom. I'm like, yeah, okay. And then when you get married, you're like, wow, yeah, you really do. And in a good way. Not that, my husband is not like, oh, you can't do anything, because obviously I'm 1,000 miles away from him right now. But you just have somebody else, to think about on that level. Hopefully that you think just as deeply about yourself, you should care deeply about your husband, or your spouse. Um so I would say, like, the transition was definitely, a challenge for me. My husband, I think we mentioned this before, pre-recording, like, a lot of times you marry your opposite. And so, my husband's just nice and steady. And I'm like, let's just go for it. We'll figure it out as we go along. And even when I was thinking about Clean Start, like, I shared with him a little bit, but I didn't share like too much, because I think early on, like, because I just have like all these business ideas that just come up. And so early on, probably the first year, my husband's eyes would just get like big, because he'd be like, oh no, not another one, like, not another idea. Now he's just like, okay, here she goes again, and we'll see what happens. But yeah, so I think, there's when transitioning into as a military spouse, I definitely, the time, it was definitely different, but it was a good thing. In fact, when I met my husband, I honestly was burning at both ends. I had the Lexington location that was within its first year of business. And then I had, Freedom Cleaning, which I think was in its fifth year of business. Can't do my calculation. Maybe it was a four year, didn't go into fifth year. And so, I remember at one point I had gone back and forth between, Louisville and Lexington cleaning, managing two kind of teams in different cities. And I remember there was probably about like 3 weeks where I would just come home exhausted on the couch. Like, I don't even think I made it to my bed, to be honest. I was just like, oh my goodness, I can't do this. And I really sat and thought, like, okay, like, this is great, Rosalynn. And again, there's the whole idea about the money thing. I'm like, because I was like, well, by 32, which I turned 32 last week, but by 32, I'm gonna have an Audi. I'm, just I'm buying cash, and like, which I don't have one, but all these like great ideas, which there's nothing bad about having goals. I mean, I think that's, it's important to have goals and not just float along in life. But I had all these things, and then I was like, but I have no one to really share it with. And so I think I did. I took some step back and say, okay, if I really want a relationship, then I've got to make time for it. Like, and I did. In fact, my husband, and I'll say this to you, it's really funny because he realizes what a gift it was now that he knows me more. But our second date, we went to Kings Island. He's in Kings Island. And I left my phone in the locker for like the whole entire day. I actually emailed my employees and said, I'm out of the office for all of today. You can call so-and-so, or Robbie or whatever. And I think that was honestly the first time that I literally was like, you know what? I don't care anymore. I'm just going to go off. And we had a great time. And I mean, I think I checked my phone once. So it's like, I think we went from the water park to the, or thing or whatnot. But I realized, like, wow, I think one thing that's been great is my husband, I think, has helped me live in the moment more. Because I'm so goal oriented. I'm such a dreamer. And I think we can miss out on the present. And I would say this too, as, somebody who's just starting a business. Like, I think we can get so overwhelmed with, oh, hey, we didn't reach this mark, and, our sales, or I don't have this or that. And I think, we need to step back and celebrate even the little things, because they add up. And so, I do that. I have that on my calendar on Fridays. Okay, what am I going to celebrate today, or, this week about? because hey, we could have had a really rough week of freedom, or or just even my traveling back and forth. It can be exhausting. But what is one thing that's really good that I can be like, yes, this we did well with, or I'm really thankful for this. I think that's really important. So, I think it's been a really great thing to be married to my husband and realize that I'm not in control of everything. And I think you can kind of forget that too as a business owner sometimes. And so your employees don't do what you want, and you're like, oh no, why don't you just listen to me? But I think, being a military spouse, you realize you really don't have a lot of say in where you go and what, how long you stay, or how short you stay. Like, everything is out of your control. But I think that's really a good thing for being an entrepreneur. Again, is we do like unpredictability in many ways because we're dreamers. So I think it works, and I think it's a good mix.
It's funny what you said about you're not in control of everything. You're used to, as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, you're used to having control over what's going on and who's doing what and everything. And I remember one time, the previous boss that I had, we were at our Christmas party for the company, and so we were at this restaurant or whatever it was, and one of the waitresses didn't do something right or whatever, and one of my managers at the time had to go to my boss and be like, these are not your employees, because he's trying to like manage them and be like, why are you doing this? You should be doing that. And she's like, you're not their boss. Like, they answer to the guy over there, not you. So I just think it's funny that, I feel like a lot of people who are entrepreneurs for life, and, that's kind of like in their blood. And it's just something that sometimes you have to remember, that it's not every aspect of your life. If it's not your business, it's okay to let it go. It's okay to let somebody else take the reins with something. And sometimes that can be a good thing. And sometimes that can be take a weight off your shoulders kind of thing. You don't have to worry about that. That's not your responsibility.
I think one thing I would add too is that, being able to travel, and my dad was Navy, but retired when I was 6. And then, I don't know why, for the longest time, I felt like it was I don't know, a thing I didn't want anybody to know, but now I don't really care. But after he retired from the Navy, my uncle had an ice cream trailer, and we joined my uncle and sold ice cream at I don't remember, 40 plus different fairs around the US. And so for 9 months out of the year, for 7.5 years of my life, so that's again where I would say it on my website, it talks about it, but where I really kind of understood business a little bit more. So maybe I didn't get an MBA, or I went to school for counseling, a degree, but I did learn early on, what it takes in the sense to own a business, which was also why I was like, yeah, I don't want to have a business because it's a lot of work. But one thing that I'm excited about too as a military spouse, because I know it as a child, just not, because he retired when I think we only did 2 stations with my dad in the Navy. But with the ice cream business, we traveled to all these different places in the US. And so I think it's an opportunity to just be able to learn from, the different areas that you live in, culture, way of life. There's just so many different things that I think is really actually going to help me be a better person, be a better business owner, to be able to think outside the box more. And so I think that's a real gift, to be able to learn from people. And I do have aspirations one day to run for some kind of office. So I'm like, well, this will be good preparation too, to be like, let me tell you, when I was in, whatever state, their business, thing wasn't so great, but, in this state, they do this really well, or I don't know. But learning from different states, I think is going to be fun.
Yeah, no, that's really cool. And I think something that goes hand in hand with what you spoke about with the mindset piece of being an entrepreneur, and then getting into a serious relationship and becoming a wife, is sacrifice. You sacrifice a lot of stuff in life that's just typical and regular for the common person when you're an entrepreneur, just as you do when you become a wife. And it's you have to be okay with that and have an open mindset to that. So how have you implemented different things with your mindset and just your self-work and keeping yourself like okay mentally when it comes to making those sacrifices that come up both in your business and in your marriage, when it comes to your time or maybe what you would rather be doing or your desires when they don't align exactly with your employees or your husband, whatever it may be.
That's a really good question. So my first year of marriage was really hard because I made it hard. I felt like I needed to be all things to all people. Again, where I should have been like, I couldn't do that in business, and that wasn't healthy my first couple of years of business. And so there was a lot of stress for me. Both my husband and I grew up in a very conservative homes, a Christian background. We both were homeschooled. And so we both went to Bible colleges. I mean, that whole thing. So, obviously there's a lot of great things about that, but I also think I was also very narrow-minded in what women do in some ways. And my mom, and I would say this, like, I don't know why. I think my mom is obviously, or she's changed so much in her thoughts and just different things. So, things that, she said maybe, as a child, she doesn't agree with now, which is, I think, really good. But I had this pressure of like, so my husband would be, because there would be some weeks, I think he had like 1 week in like the spring, or he had like maybe like, I think he had a month in May. Our first year we got married, and then he had, which is why we got married in March, because we knew that he had like a couple of months, about a month and a half, and then he was going to be gone for like 13 weeks, at one stint and all this stuff. And so put all this pressure, and I think women are starting to realize this, I hope. I mean, I'm glad I'm learning this now at a young age, right? But we put so much pressure on ourselves, and there are so many pressures that are put on us. You have family, you have obviously your marriage, you have, your work, obligations and all this stuff. And so I just stressed out a lot. Like I was like, okay, like I'm going to clean all day long in Louisville, and then I'm going to run home to Dayton, Ohio, and I'm going to make this homemade meal. And then I don't know why, and I laugh now, but I think there are a couple times I cried my eyes out. But I like make the food, and then I would like drop in from the oven, whatever had happened. I think it happened like twice, or I burnt something another time. And I'm like, oh my goodness, my poor husband. And it just meant a lot to me because like my mom was such a wonderful cook, but I was who knows what. So all those stresses of, I need to fit this particular, picture of what a wife does. I put so much, and I remember I was talking to actually our pastor one time, and he actually looked at me, he goes, Rosalynn, like, he's like, you have all this pressure on you. Like, he's like, no one can do what you're expecting yourself to be able to do. And honestly, I was like, a really good slap in the face, but it was also like a good, like, oh, wow. Like, I really am putting a lot of unnecessary demands on myself. And so, thankfully my husband is really supportive, and this is what I've had a hard time learning, but for him, it's like, I just want to be with you. Like, you don't have to make me a nice meal. Now he's, I think, somewhat still a bachelor, and like, he'll still eat his pizza. I'm like, oh my gosh, like, like we got to get you to more healthy food, or whatnot. But I think that's been a good thing about marriage too, that at least my husband has taught me, that it's not really all the doing, it's just the being together, being present. And so yeah, I think the expectations were too high for me. So when I, knew that we were moving and all those different things, I think that's where, again, you have to look at the transition in life and say, okay, if you're going to put, and this is my husband said to me too, he was like, how are you going to be able to do all this stuff? Like, you're adding this brand new business. Like, and you can tell he's worried, which he should be, because I, can burn myself out. And I said, honey, like, I'm going to do this business, but I'm going to bring more reinforcements around me. And I'm going to, have people that, again, can do things that I don't want to do, but I know they're gifted in. So, and recently in the last, I would say, I think she's 2 weeks. Yeah, 2 weeks. My friend Jen, who actually worked for me at Freedom for a little bit as well. But she's in Florida now with her husband and 2 kids, but, stay-at-home mom, but wanted to be able to work too. So she's my executive assistant, and she does a fantastic job. She's always like, put stuff on my calendar for me, email. I mean, she's just really good. And so I think that, with the transitions, having to really reevaluate, okay, if I'm going to put more on my list, what is something that I can take off my list? I think that's a good tip to have, so you're not going insane. And then again, just not feeling guilty. I wish to say that I'm not a people pleaser, but I know I am, because like right before I got married, my husband and I, he'll joke with me, and it's still kind of a little bit of a pain still in my soul, because I remember how like upset I was when this person told me this, and they meant well. But we're getting ready to get married, and again, we knew his schedule. He was going to be gone for like 20 plus weeks, for the next 2 years. So we talked about before we even got engaged, and engagement, like we're going to keep the freedom business and then reevaluate when we know where the Air Force is going to send us. And but after like I said to this lady, like, yeah, I'm going to still keep my business. She's like, you can't do that. Like, you need to, like, you're married, like you need to quit. And then she's like, it'll be fine. You can just go and make pot holders. I was like, what? Like, and I'm sorry, but like, so my husband will joke sometimes. He'll be like, hey, you gonna go make some pot holders? Like, be quiet. Like, but again, that was okay. But then I did. I mean, I will tell you, like for months, just even with the traveling back and forth, I was like, am I doing the right thing? Like, am I a horrible wife that I'm not, that I'm not here for my husband? Like, or even now, like, I'm 1,000 miles away. Is that wrong for me? And so one thing that's helped me as a military spouse is to say, you know what, like there are just different seasons in life. And I don't want this to be a long-term thing. Like, and I know that there's going to be a new season of however freedom pans out, whether it's, I have people that can, which is where I'm headed, hire some more great, qualified, kind, just hardworking folks to just, really be able to run it for me. So I only have to come visit, once a month or every other month or, that kind of thing. But I'm still mentoring, and we're doing, Zoom meetings, and I'm really pouring in. I'm still in touch, but not physically here. But what I had to say to myself is, this is a season, but like, why is it wrong? And this is kind of my defense to that lady, even though I never went back to her and was like, well, let me tell you why it's okay. Like for me to do this, which I want to do, let me tell you. But is that, my husband is in the military. Military families are very different. There's going to be a time where my husband, will probably be deployed. So is that wrong for him as the man, as my husband, to be gone from me for a year? Like, so, and that's what I said to Andrew, is like, and we both agree, like, there's just different seasons in life. Like right now, like I'm the one that's kind of gone a little bit more than he is. But there may be a season of life where he's the one gone and I'm the one holding down the fort, with a bunch of kids or whatever. And so it's just a different seasons of life. And so not to put so much pressure on ourselves. I think that women really just need to do that. Whether it's, am I, a good enough mom, or am I good at this, or am I good at that? And just be you. Show up, be intentional. But at the end of the day, this is what I laugh about, because we all know this. We'll look at our own parents are super awesome and we love them, but there are things that all of us here, three of us would be like, yeah, we probably wouldn't do whatever mom or dad did. We do this differently. But guess what? Our kids are going to do the same thing. Be like, oh yeah, we love our mom and dad, but yeah, man, there's some things we're just not going to do. So let's not feel like we have to nail everything, 100%, because that's not realistic.
Yeah, I think that's so true. We definitely put too much pressure on ourselves as women. I mean, men have their own pressures they put on themselves too, but as a woman, I definitely can relate to that. And I think one thing that I heard a while back that really made sense to me is, and this will connect well with entrepreneurs as well, is when you're a business owner or a manager, the more that you manage, the less you do the actual work. It's just how it happens. That's how it works, because you can't do both all at the same time. It's just not possible. But for some reason, as women, as wives and mothers and everything, as we go along in our lives, we become the managers of our entire family, as well as the person that does most of the things traditionally around the house and everything. So it's shifting this mentality of like the mental burden that we put on ourselves to remember to do everything. We have to sign this paper, and we have to cook this meal, and we have to, drive this kid to this place and do a bazillion things. I always laugh, Melissa, her mind is insane. I don't even understand how she remembers all these things. But at the same time, you have the pressure to remember all of these things and manage everybody's lives around you. as well as do it all. And it just doesn't really make sense. It's like nothing works that way except for being a wife and a mother. Those are the only things in the world where where you're encouraged to both be the manager of all of the work as well as doing all of the work. And I just think it's crazy. And that had a big impact on me when I heard it.
That's great. Yeah. And it's even, my mom was a stay-at-home mom. And so, I know that she did a lot too. And so I think that there can be some, and I won't say who, but I worked for somebody who was like, oh yeah, and the moms are there at blah, blah, blah time. And they're just sitting in the, carpool line. And I'm like, okay. And I'm working, da, da, da. And I'm just like, yeah, but you have, let's see, a cook, you have you have a nanny, and so we can't do it all. And so I want to encourage, moms out there that, may not be in the workforce per se, but they're doing a lot too. I mean, they have expectations on them. I mean, they're the cleaner, they're the, the tutor right now. Goodness gracious. I'm so glad I don't have any kids at home right now to tutor, but they're helping with their kids with school right now. And they're, cleaning and laundry. I mean, just a whole bunch of different things that, that somebody else is going to have to do if they're not doing it. So they're just as much valued. So I just wanted to share that.
Yeah, thank you for saying that. That definitely needs to be heard. I think that like a lot of what we do as women often goes overlooked because it's just like, oh, that's like what you're supposed to do. Duh. Like this is society. That's like what everybody does. That's a woman. Like, no, I have other things I want to be doing. Sorry, like if the laundry's not my priority today, you can, wear something that's buried in the closet. I don't know, like figure it out. But I think it's just really important to come back and understand the need to release those super high or unrealistic expectations of ourselves that we put on ourselves, because so ingrained in us, especially growing up here in America, like from everything we've seen from old school movies to how maybe our grandparents and parents grew up, or how our households were, or how our friends' households were growing up. And we live in a totally different world nowadays, 2020, like digital life, like women can work from home, women can get paid more than men, get paid as much as men, and we can fight for everything that we want and everything that we desire. So why are you going to let your high expectations of yourself to do all of these different things weigh you down so much so that you can't do the one thing that you're really, really going to be good at, that you're really going to thrive within, and you can't pour your energy into that because you're not delegating the other tasks? Like, it's not always easy. And this is not to say like, oh, everybody can hire somebody to go and like pick up their laundry and pick up their kids and do this and do that. Like, no, I want to do that stuff too. And I think we all have that like inside of us. Oh, I want to do it all. And that's exactly what I mean when I say like releasing those high expectations. Like there's going to be some days where you're late. There's going to be a day where you miss the dentist appointment. There's going to be a day where you don't get the email out on time. So it'll be what it'll be, and the world will go on and you will be fine. Your kids will be fine. Your business will be fine. You just pick up where you left off, go take a nice hot bath and have a glass of wine and come back tomorrow. You're going to be good. So yeah, wow, this has just been so inspirational. I think it's amazing everything that you've built, Rosalynn. Like just the whole travel aspect just blows my mind. Like I just feel when you have to like be all over the place and do all these different things, and you're literally thousands of miles away from all the different things that you're doing at one given point in time. That's really difficult to wrap my brain around right now. So the fact that you're doing that successfully, kudos to you. Amazing.
You mentioned kind of like maintaining strength and good communication in your relationship. So I think one thing that I would add here, and again, I hope that no one listens and thinks, oh gosh, she has her life together, she just knows what she's doing. I don't, which who does, right? But I think one thing that's really helped our marriage is a simple question that I ask my husband, hopefully almost on everyday basis, but I don't think I did today. So, but I know for sure, like, when I'm in Texas and, we're getting ready for the day, I say, what is one thing I can do to serve you today? And I think that that's really helpful. Like when he's able to say, hey, this would be really helpful. And it could be something like really simple, like, hey, I really need this at the store. or it could be something even more like, hey, you know, when I've been gone, which I really try to come back every week, if not every other week. So we're not, you know, completely months apart from each other. But, you know, I think there was last week, because I'd done, I think 3 weeks in a row, going on to 4th week. And I was like, I think I just need to be in Louisville because I'm working all week. And then the next week, like maybe I just need to be like at home in Kentucky for just, you know, a moment. But when I did ask him, I was like, you know, is there something that I can do? And he did mention, he was like, it was for last weekend. He's like, it'd really mean a lot to me if you would be home for Halloween for, you know, this event on base and da da da. I said, oh, okay. And I did. I made it happen. But I think that that's just important too in the midst of it is that. And I think, and not that I'm trying to be like the marriage, you know, therapist or anything like that, but I think a huge thing, and it's something that I think all marriages, it's a learning process for sure as you're building trust and intimacy, but you can't have intimacy in a marriage if there's not vulnerability and honesty. And so, you know, I want to be very careful that if my husband does get to a point where he's like, you know, I really can't do this anymore with you traveling back and forth, I don't just like, well, he's just saying that. Like, I want to be able to listen and hear that. And I want him to feel that he's able to say that to me because he does matter, like over my business and even my employees. And I'll tell my employees, like, you know what, like he's number one in my life. Like, you know, I can get a lot of things wrong. But I don't want my marriage, as much as obviously marriage is a whole challenge and wonderful blessing in the same way. So, you know, but I don't want that to be sacrificed over a business. But again, there's different seasons in life, and sometimes you may have to work a whole lot more in one season of life, especially when you start a business. You know, it's going to be a lot more time than hopefully maybe, you know, a year or so down the road, I may not have to work as much again, or you delegate or whatnot. But I would just say that I think that that's just really important. As entrepreneurs, I think we are so great at having a to-do list and let's go do this, and we have a vision. I think many of us can forget being present. So I guess as I wrap up, I think what my big thing and would be is I created a delegation worksheet for your guests to get for free to download, because I think that this was really helpful for me when I've been thinking about, okay, what is it that I'd like to do? What is it that I don't like to do? And then thinking outside the box of like, okay, like who do I tap into? Whether it's I hire an agency or an executive assistant or you know, I'm going to get a bookkeeper instead. And here's the things that I like to do and I love to do. And so when you delegate, I think it's such a huge relief because then you can get more time back. Because that's one thing that we just don't have endless time of, or endless, you know, things of is time. And so I would just really encourage anyone that, you know, you're trying to think about, okay, like my life is just really chaotic right now. You know, what is something that I can step back and say, first of all, like, is there any me time for you? And I think that as a small business owner, but not even as a small business owner, like as a mom, as, you know, as a wife, like I think we have a great tendency to be so others focused, which is awesome, but that we forget our me time and having that self-care, which I'm really thankful self-care is a word that is, you know, I think more popular these days. I think for me and my conservative background, I felt like it was a very selfish word, like, oh no, like I can't be doing that. And I realized that's ridiculous. If you are not pouring into yourself, you're really not going to be able to pour out. And so I hope that these worksheets will be able to help you guys, you know, kind of think through like, what is it that I like to do? What is it that I don't like to do? You know, as a mom, maybe there might be a season where, you know, you have somebody do some more meal prep for you. You know, maybe you hire somebody part-time to be able to come in and do some laundry for you or chop up some food. I did that as a house manager, did some errands for them. I think that that's good. You know, for me, I'll admit right now, like, you know, when I'm in Louisville, so that my food doesn't go to waste because I know I'm going to be gone and I'm going to make food in Texas. Like I use a company called, I think, Factor or whatever, where they send me food, you know, that's organic or whatever, which is healthy. But, you know, again, I could put a pressure on myself and be like, oh no, I need to make my own food, you know. No, there's just different seasons in life. So that's kind of my thing is that I would hope that this really helps you all kind of figure out the next steps so that going into next year, you can have more time for yourself, but also too, and this is where it's all about, and I think COVID has shown this too, it's all about relationships. And so see it as, you know, when you are able to delegate, you're able to be more present for yourself, for others. not miss those memories and those moments with your loved ones. So yeah.
Yes. Thank you so much for joining us today, Rosalynn. This was such a pleasure having you on. Can you just tell our guests the best places to find you, where you prefer to be communicated with, if anybody would like to reach out?
So you can go to my website for Clean Start Consulting at www.cleanstart-consulting.com. And then also I'm on Instagram at Clean Start Consulting, as well as on Facebook. So, and then also if you prefer email, it's just the Rosalynn, ROSALYNN at cleanstart-consulting.com. I would love to hear from you all and learn even, examples that you guys have that I haven't even thought of, how to better delegate.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. We'll link to all of that in the show notes for sure. And we have a ton of great stuff coming up. So stay tuned for everything that's coming, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye for now.